What if everything we thought about House of the Dragon was completely wrong? Hidden in plain sight is a clue so disturbing that it could change the entire meaning of the series, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because despite all the debates about pacing, missing battles, and controversial changes from Fire and Blood, the real story isn't about what happened in the first 2 seasons. It's about what comes next. In fact, HBO may have accidentally revealed something terrifying about the future of House of the Dragon. The final 2 seasons won't just finish the Dance of the Dragons. They will determine whether this entire series is remembered as a masterpiece or as one of the biggest missed opportunities in fantasy television history. And the most shocking part is that the clues have been sitting right in front of us all along. Ever since House of the Dragon premiered, viewers have been obsessed with one question: Team Black or Team Green? The show encouraged us to choose sides. It gave us heroes, villains, betrayals, and rival claimants fighting for the Iron Throne. But what if that was never the true story? What if the Dance of the Dragons was always a trap designed to distract us from something much darker? Because if you look closely at George R.R. Martin's world, every great war follows the same pattern. People become obsessed with power while ignoring the catastrophe quietly growing in the background. And that pattern may be the key to understanding why the final 2 seasons are so important. Think back to the original Game of Thrones. For years, kings and queens fought over the throne while the White Walkers marched south. Entire families destroyed themselves chasing power while a far greater threat approached. House of the Dragon appears to be repeating that exact formula. While Rhaenyra and Aegon tear the realm apart, dragons are dying, noble houses are collapsing, and the foundation of Targaryen rule is quietly crumbling beneath everyone's feet. The war itself may not be the tragedy. The real tragedy is what the war creates, and that changes everything about how we should view the story. One of the biggest clues comes from Viserys himself. Throughout Season 1, many viewers saw him as weak, a king unable to control his family, a ruler who spent his reign avoiding conflict. But looking back, Viserys may have understood something the others didn't. Every decision he made was driven by fear of civil war. He knew that once dragons turned against dragons, there would be no going back. His family believed they were fighting over succession. Viserys feared they were gambling with the future of their entire dynasty, and now the consequences of those fears are beginning to unfold. What's fascinating is that the show repeatedly emphasizes prophecy, specifically Aegon's dream, the Song of Ice and Fire. Some fans criticized its inclusion, but what if it's actually the most important addition the series has made? The prophecy constantly reminds viewers that the Iron Throne isn't supposed to be the ultimate goal. Survival is. The Targaryens were meant to unite the realm against a future threat. Instead, they become consumed by their own ambitions.
The realm's only hope is a leader who can unite it, and my brother chose you.
The irony is devastating. The family chosen to protect the future may ultimately be responsible for weakening it, and that realization casts every victory and defeat in a completely different light. Then there's the dragons themselves. At first glance, dragons seem like weapons, ultimate symbols of power, but House of the Dragon often presents them as something more tragic. They are living manifestations of Targaryen greatness. Every dragon represents a piece of the dynasty's strength, and during the dance, those dragons don't simply die. They disappear from history. One by one, the creatures that made the Targaryens exceptional are destroyed, because their riders cannot stop fighting each other. The war isn't just killing people, it's killing magic itself. And once viewers recognize that pattern, every future dragon death becomes infinitely more heartbreaking. This is where the final 2 seasons face their greatest challenge. The Dance of the Dragons contains some of the most spectacular battles George R.R. Martin has ever written: massive dragon duels, shocking betrayals, cities burning beneath dragonfire. But spectacle alone won't save the show. If the final seasons focus only on action, they'll miss the deeper tragedy that makes the story resonate. Because the dance isn't memorable because dragons fight. It's memorable because everyone loses. Every victory carries the seed of future disaster. Every triumph pushes the realm closer to collapse. And translating that emotional devastation to television may determine whether the ending succeeds. There's also a dangerous trap waiting for the writers. Modern audiences often expect clear heroes and villains, but House of the Dragon has always thrived in moral ambiguity. Rhaenyra makes sympathetic choices and terrible ones. Alicent is both victim and participant. Daemon is charismatic and horrifying. The problem is that the dance becomes increasingly brutal as it progresses. Characters audiences currently support will make decisions that become harder and harder to defend. If the show pulls its punches, the story loses its power. But if it remains faithful to the darkness ahead, many viewers may find themselves questioning characters they once loved. And that's where things become truly unpredictable. Daemon Targaryen may be the perfect example. For years, Daemon has been one of the franchise's most popular characters. He's reckless, dangerous, and endlessly entertaining. But the deeper House of the Dragon moves into the dance, the more uncomfortable his legacy becomes. The show has already hinted at this transformation. Moments that initially seem heroic often contain something deeply unsettling beneath the surface. Daemon isn't simply fighting for Rhaenyra. He's chasing legacy, glory, and power in ways that mirror many of the people he claims to oppose. The final seasons may force audiences to confront who Daemon really is, and the answer may not be what anyone wants to hear. But House of the Dragon has never been a story about rightful rulers. It's a story about what power does to people. Every season has shown characters becoming increasingly isolated by ambition, grief, and paranoia. The question isn't whether Rhaenyra deserves the throne. The question is what the pursuit of that throne will cost her. History is filled with leaders who began with noble intentions only to become consumed by the very systems they sought to change. And there are signs that Rhaenyra may be walking the same path. But perhaps the most overlooked clue of all involves the small folk. For much of the series, common people exist in the background. They cheer kings. They suffer wars. They witness dragon battles from below. Yet the show repeatedly reminds us that their anger is growing. Every dragon attack, every succession crisis, every noble feud pushes them closer to a breaking point. The nobility believe the war belongs to them. They believe dragons make them untouchable. But history repeatedly proves that rulers who ignore ordinary people do so at their own peril. And if House of the Dragon follows the trajectory many expect, that simmering resentment could explode in ways that forever change Westeros. This is why the final 2 seasons are carrying such enormous pressure. They're not simply adapting the ending of a conflict, they're adapting the death of an era, the fall of dragons, the collapse of a dynasty's illusion of invincibility, the destruction of relationships that once seemed unbreakable. Every storyline is converging toward a moment where the cost of ambition can no longer be ignored. If the writers capture that tragedy, House of the Dragon could become one of television's greatest cautionary tales. But if they reduce it to battles and shock value, the emotional core of the story risks disappearing entirely. And then, there's the shadow hanging over everything, Game of Thrones. Whether fair or not, audiences still remember the divisive ending of HBO's original series. That memory creates a unique challenge. Every decision House of the Dragon makes will inevitably be compared to what came before. The final seasons aren't just concluding their own story. They're trying to restore faith in an entire franchise. That's an enormous burden for any show. Yet it may also be an opportunity. Because unlike Game of Thrones, this story already has an ending. The challenge isn't creating one. It's making viewers feel its weight. The most fascinating possibility is that the true protagonist of House of the Dragon isn't Rhaenyra, Alicent, Daemon, or Aegon. It's the dynasty itself. For 2 seasons, we've watched the Targaryens at the height of their power. Dragons fill the skies. The family dominates the realm. They appear unstoppable. But every episode has quietly documented their decline. Every betrayal, every death, every act of vengeance strips away another piece of what made them great. Viewed through that lens, House of the Dragon becomes less a story about succession and more a story about extinction. Not the extinction of a bloodline, but the extinction of an idea. And suddenly, every conflict feels far more tragic. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The Dance of the Dragons doesn't produce winners, it produces survivors. And those are not the same thing. The final 2 seasons will force audiences to confront a reality that many fantasy stories avoid. Sometimes the greatest threat isn't an invading army, an ancient evil, or a rival kingdom. Sometimes the greatest threat comes from within: pride, resentment, ambition, the inability to compromise, the belief that victory matters more than unity. Those flaws are what destroy families, kingdoms, and civilizations. Dragons simply make the consequences larger. And maybe that's the hidden meaning House of the Dragon has been building toward from the very beginning. Not that power corrupts, not that war is tragic, but that civilizations rarely fall because they are defeated from the outside. They fall because they convince themselves they're too powerful to fail. And if that's true, then the final 2 seasons aren't just the ending of House of the Dragon. They're the moment the entire story reveals what it was really about all along. So here's the question. When the dance finally ends and the ashes settle, will audiences remember who won the Iron Throne? Or will they remember how the Targaryens destroyed themselves trying to keep it?